Okay, so welcome back, everybody. And as you might see, we have some new people with us. If you could just say a few words about you, and then at this point, if you can put it on speaker view so that you can see in big screen whomever is talking. Okay, so Sister Rene, could you please say a few words to us? Thank you.
Hi, I'm coming to you from a very small town in northeastern Ohio. And if I have to mute myself in the middle of my words, it'll be because we have more trains in this town than we have people. And they're very, very loud and they drown out everything. So if I suddenly, my voice disappears. I am the director of Hispanic Pastoral Ministry in a very small parish here.
Thank you. Thank you, Sister Rene. And then Sister Annie.
Good morning, everyone. It's good to be with you. I'm a novice with our congregation, so I'm currently in Chicago at the Collaborative Dominican Novitiate.
Thank you. And Sister Margie, since you will be on the panel too, would you like to say a few words about yourself?
Sure. I'm Sister Margie, Dominican Sister of Peace. I'm mission group coordinator. But before that, I was a campus minister at Ohio Dominican University. So I had lots of different opportunities to be able to go to the spring mission groups that we plan for the students, to Haiti, and then before that after that to McAllen, Texas, and worked with the immigration.
Thank you. Thank you. And the reason we invited these three sisters because the topic is going to be in a sense of how we are meeting the needs of the times, because we never know what our next mission is going to be or ministry is going to be. Really, our ministries are shaped by the needs around us, needs of the world. And so the team asked to three sisters to share about how they respond to their vocation call in a sense and respond to the needs of the times. Frederick Bruckner said, "Vocation is the place where our deep gladness meets the world's deep need." And so, Sister Rene, you are working with immigrants and parishioners, and and Margie, well, you're a mission group coordinator, but you've been doing several mission trips. And Annie, you've been, writing the article last summer about racial healing and just how you speak truth in this hurting world. So I just put out a question: how do you see that vocation as a place where our deep gladness meets the world's deep need? How do you see that as a religious sister?
Well, I could begin, and I have to say, Bea, you ask us three questions, and to me, they're all the same question. I think ministry in many ways for me has been sort of a mystery, and I deeply believe in the serendipity of God's leading us. I'm where I am now, working with immigrants primarily from Guatemala, as this stage of what has been a long journey that began in serendipity, I won't tell you how many years ago, in Denver. When I entered the community, we either worked in hospitals or we taught. I didn't want to do either one. Don't ask me why I entered the Dominicans, but anyway, I taught school for a couple of years. I wasn't good at it and I didn't enjoy it. And it was clear to me I didn't want to keep doing it. But in a moment of serendipity in Denver, when nobody else was willing to volunteer to teach religion at a little mission church that we had that was primarily Hispanos whose families had lived in New Mexico or Colorado for generations. I said yes, and that began the trajectory of my ministry. It was a need that I responded to at that point. The people there invited me graciously into their community, their homes, their lives, their music, their worship, and I began to learn and be changed by them. It was a need. I had a gift that I could meet it, and life went on from there. And I won't say any more. I'll let other people begin to respond. I can add more later.
For myself, I'm a social worker by trade. And so I've always had a desire to look to see how I can be there for people and how can I respond. And after entering the community and having the opportunity to work at a higher Dominican university as a campus minister, I knew the value of somehow bringing that desire to be there for people and to serve to the students. And so I had an opportunity to be part of the mission program that we had. And the first 3 years we went to Haiti, and it was a medical clinic, and we went up to the mountains and with the physician assistants program that we had. It was our clinicals. And we actually, not only saw to their medical needs, but we also provided them with food, and were there all day helping the families and the children with the needs that they had. And then we also had the opportunity, I had the opportunity to go to McAllen, Texas, and work at Catholic Charities. And we went to Matamoros over in Mexico, across the border, where they had the big tent city, which now they are actually, eliminating the tent city. And of course, all the children are going to the detention center, waiting to get over to the US. But so it was those experiences that really shaped me in a way that realized the importance of really looking at what the needs are every day and trying to respond to the best of your ability. And I can share more later as well. So.
Buchner's phrase, "our deep gladness," makes me think of scripture verses that really speak profoundly to my relationship with God and who I experience God to be, who Jesus is for me. So one of those verses is from Romans. "In the reign of God, there is justice and peace and joy in the Holy Spirit. So then let us pursue the ways of peace and mutual upbuilding." And I love that vision of God's reign. Life in communion with God is where there is justice and peace and joy. And those justice and peace being together brings us joy. And that's what I experience when I feel that I am aligned with Jesus's mission to announce the reign of God, that is justice and peace and joy in the Holy Spirit. That's when I feel most animated and most alive. And I mean, our world is in such deep need for justice and peace and joy as well. So when I think about the, concretely how that passion animates me, my research and writing is in the tradition of Christian spirituality. So I work especially on medieval mystics and holy women who have this profound wisdom to offer us about God's dwelling within us, which is where peace begins, right? We, in our relationship with God, we need to find that is where our peace comes from, our inner peace, how we are peaceful within ourselves so that we can be peaceful with other people. and our oneness with creation. The medieval mystical tradition has great insight into that. And there's a need right now to stop doing violence to Earth, our home. So that's where my research and writing is really grounded in a tradition of Christian spirituality, and the wisdom that that offers us for how to be peace and build peace in the world today. And then in my teaching, I'm really committed to addressing inequitable access to education. So I've taught in a women's prison, and right now I'm ministering at here in Chicago, Cook County Jail, which is, I think, the second largest jail in the country. So, you know, where do we need justice? We need racial justice, interracial justice. And for me, the kind of blaring embodiment of racial injustice in this country is our system of mass incarceration, which is tied into police violence. And so that's sort of connected to the teaching that I've done, but I think I'll stop there.
Thank you, Annie, and thank you, Rene, and thank you, Margie. I think those are great examples of how you're living out your vocation, that you're being called by God. And you can also, okay, so I'm going to just avoid the other three questions that Rene was talking about, but how has religious life influenced what you can be? I'm like, Rene, you kind of gave us a hint. It's you knew what you did not want to be. So maybe I guess that's one way to find out what brings out the best from you. But how has religious life influenced what you can be?
I think it's, you know, life in general is a journey. And at the beginning, we might think we know where we're going, but I think we always find that there are twists and turns along the way that we never had suspected. So as I said, I started out in Denver, but I quickly discovered that the big city was not where my heart was. And ever since then, I've been engaged more in rural ministry. And when you work in a very small parish, it doesn't matter what your title is. Mine was usually director of liturgical ministry because I'm a musician and a liturgist. But when you work in a small parish, you do everything. And whatever the greatest need is on that particular day is where you find yourself led. So if that's being at someone's home when a family member is dying, if that's getting called in the middle of the night to a crisis, if that's going to the jail because the sheriff calls and says, somebody here needs to see you, you simply go wherever the need is at that moment, praying on the way that somehow there's the gift to be able to respond. But it's not always giving, it's receiving as well. And I think that's so important to remember, that we're gifted and changed by the people with whom we minister. So, you know, often people will thank me and I try to always thank them, because from every community in which I have worked, whether it was folks in rural Colorado or the women in Juarez, where I was director of a women and children's center, or now the folks from Guatemala, I've always learned and received, I think, more than I've given. And I don't say that out of a false sense of humility. I really, really mean that. They've changed me in ways that make me much better.
Thank you. That's where I actually met you. I was still discerning religious life, and Sister Kathy Skyped you in at that time. It wasn't Zoom yet.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. How about Sister Margie or Annie? How has religious life influenced you, what you can be? You're muted.
Okay. Well, when I think back on when I entered religious life, I knew I did not want to be a teacher. And I knew at the point when I entered, you didn't have to be a teacher. I entered in 1982. But I really wasn't sure. I had a degree in social work, but through the process, I started working at the Dwelling Place, which is a shelter for homeless women. And that's when I realized that I really wanted to do something with my degree and really work with the homeless population. So I did that for 3 years, and it was another opportunity, like Rene talked about, a give and take. I learned so much from the women, and they helped me grow in ways that that I never dreamed, making me realize that that for the grace of God, there go I, and just being with the women and having so many things in common. And then wanting to go further, I got my master's, and then I started working with people with mental illness, and learning about the system and what they had to deal with, and then trying to meet their needs. And then, of course, as communities go, they asked me to be vocation director. So each step along the way, when the community asked me to do something, it was like, oh my goodness, can I really, do I really have the gifts to be able to share my life? And, but it was amazing how God just sort of put things in my lap and said, yes, you can do it. And through God's grace, again, I was able to be the things that God wanted me to be, and to be able to serve to the best of my ability in all the different areas that God put me in. And then when I became a campus minister, I loved being with the students, and it was sort of like I felt alive, and felt like I was able to be there for each one of them, listening to them, and then providing them an opportunities to be more aware of their gifts and how they can continue to journey in their own life and be a source of strength and comfort to people that they will be serving and are serving.
Obviously, this is, I'm still in the beginning stages, so I think I can talk about what has drawn me to religious life and what I've experienced so far. And I think I would say it has to do with authenticity and freedom and witness. So for me, authenticity, I can sometimes feel, and I think I felt this, earlier in my life, that kind of an interest in medieval spirituality and a commitment to social justice right now can seem like they're not connected at all. But being in religious life, I mean, they are there, and sometimes it's hard for me to explain how are they connected, but being a Dominican especially, we are coming out of, this is our tradition, this is our charism. And so, going back to the 13th century with Saint Dominic. And so that like my own sense of that tradition is crucial to how we address justice and work for justice in our world. That deep grounding in a spiritual tradition helps us do this work that fits with being a Dominican. So that's a place where I can be my authentic self with these commitments that may not seem to the world to be connected. Freedom, I feel that being a religious, I can take the time to get involved with prison ministry. Whereas I think that maybe if I were just an academic, I wouldn't have I would, be more concerned about you know, moving up and doing publishing and all of these things. And of course, I care about those things, but that I have a kind of freedom that this is part of who I am as a woman religious. And that I can have that commitment and make the time and commit myself to this kind of justice work, which might not be possible within the sort of like rigors of the way academia works. And for witness, I would say, you know, writing, I don't know that I would have written this article if I hadn't. It was important for me to imagine writing it to our congregation in a way, and then kind of imagining a larger audience from there. But it was about how do we as a congregation committed to preaching peace, how can we respond in this moment where this term peaceful protest is being bandied around in a way to support the white power structure in this country. So it was that imagining my audience of our congregation, this is our mission to preach peace. How do we do it in this moment? That really enabled me to write that article, which felt very, at the time, like I was moved by the Spirit to write it. And so I think it's that being part of a community, being part of a congregation that is greater than just my individual voice.
I'd like to respond to something you said, Annie, because it tweaked a memory in me of belonging to a congregation like ours, which I think we grow into. You know, we're attracted obviously to the congregation that we joined, and then we grow into an understanding of who we are. And early on, when I was in Denver, I worked on a diocesan team that we were doing outreach and evangelization in some housing projects. And we lived with sisters of other congregations. I was primarily living with Benedictines, and I loved their tradition, but it was very helpful to me because it helped me understand who they were, and in contrast, who I was as a Dominican, because it became clear to me that we had some similar threads in our history. Dominicans have a monastic side to ourselves, but we were very different. And later on, when I moved into rural Colorado, I lived for 14 years with the Sisters of Loretto. And again, I love them. They're some of my dearest friends. And I love their traditions, but they deepened me in the love of ours. And it became clear to me that we both had rich traditions that offered much to the church, and we were very different. So sometimes in contrast, I think we learn to appreciate who we are and who our real call is to be preachers in word and in deed of that call to peace and justice.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And then just one last question. One of our listeners who is here on this Zoom call asked me maybe like 2 months ago about in terms of ministry, can a sister volunteer? And my short answer is yes, but I just, Margie, if you could tell about your experience of what's your major ministry at the moment, and well, you already heard about that she has done the Haiti, but what else are you doing? Like, can you volunteer or any of those?
Yes, right now I'm a mission group coordinator, which basically is a support person for the sisters. And I help them through any kind of ministry change or any health issues that they may have or going through, that I'm there for them. And I visit with them, and if they need any kind of budget changes, I do that, those kind of things. But I'm really there for their support and to be there with them during any situation. But during that time, I also do Meals on Wheels. And I really have enjoyed those times in the morning when I go get their food and pack it in my car and then go to the different houses. And because of COVID, I haven't had as much time as I used to have to actually go in and talk with them. But it's been a very worthwhile experience for me and for the people that I serve. And it's something that I really enjoy doing. And sometimes we, take like two routes instead of just one, or we go back and forth. And I also do other things when I have an opportunity to volunteer. And I've always I get that really from my family, because my sister Connie always did all kinds of volunteer work while bringing up her family. So volunteering has always been part of my life, and it really has helped me develop my relationship with God and the importance of serving God in all different ways, not just my main ministry and stuff. So our community always encourages us to go the extra mile.
I volunteer at our local food pantry. On Thursday mornings, I, along with about 4 other people, get to do the inglorious job of sorting through all of the boxes of vegetables and fruit that were donated from Walmart and the local grocery stores, and pulling out what's still good to use and boxing it up for people who will come Thursday evening. Right now it's a drive-by pickup, and then I come back on Thursday evening and help distribute that food and provide translation services for any of the non-English speaking, as long as they speak Spanish, folks who come through. And so that's my volunteer work ministry right at this time.
Well, this year is a little different because the canonical novitiate year is a year of study. But I can tell you about the volunteer ministry I'm currently doing at Cook County. So during the pandemic, this is the Archdiocese of Chicago's ministry to persons impacted by incarceration. So both people who are inside the jail, people who are re-entering society, and family members of incarcerated persons. So since we haven't been able to go inside during the pandemic, but the jail increased the number of people being released to lower the density of the population, we've had a higher number of people re-entering. And they come out of the jail and they have $10 and a bus pass, and they're sent to a halfway house, and they have 60 days to get a state ID, find housing, and find a job, which in the middle of a pandemic. So, I mean, it's just an insane system. But Colby House, we're really focused on accompanying our clients, and we can provide some material support to help them along, connecting them to resources. This has been happening over the phone. So when people first get out, they'll call and I will get their story, hear what challenges they're facing, and encourage them and connect them with the resources that we have. We've still been trying to offer some programming inside the jail remotely. They don't really have computer access to do things virtually. So I've in the past taught a course on grief and mourning. And so I sort of redesigned that as a series of handouts that went into the jail. We called it Life After Loss. So this went to people inside who had lost a loved one during the past year, and really looking at psychology, social sciences around grief and mourning, as well as, I'm a literature person, so poetry and art. And then the people in the course could write back. So that was, a very sacred it was a privilege to read what they wrote. There was one man who 4 members of his family died in a month from COVID. A man whose 18-year-old son had died, a 24-year-old brother had died of an overdose. So that, you know, that is sacred, to have people share their stories with you. And my new project is to do a poetry magazine or a creative arts anthology for people who are incarcerated to send in their poetry, their stories, and their drawings. And we are producing a small publication to showcase that work and share it with the public. So it's been really fun to, you know, I've been able to get involved in a variety of ways with Colby House.
Thank you so much. These are very, really rich. So thank you. And looks like it has given some thoughts for questions. So I'm going to open up the questions. And at the same time, Mary Ellen, put it in the chat where you can find the article by Annie. So make sure that you save that link, or we can also send it to you after the retreat. And there is a question. Can someone discerning shadow a sister, or a sister working in different areas of the religious life and church? So again, I'm going to read the question. Can someone discerning shadow a sister or sisters working in different areas of the religious life and church? So I would say the priority is for the 3 panelists. However, any sister is able to jump in to respond to these questions.
I would say the answer to that is yes. You know, obviously some areas of ministry are easier to open up to accompaniment than others. Some things that we do, you know, have a very personal component. So you really wouldn't be able to have somebody sit in. I think of like personal counseling or issues like that. But yes, I think that, and that has happened, and it's really valuable to enable those kinds of experiences.
Thank you. And we also usually have the mission days or mission for peace days, which has been very different during COVID for us, but we are hoping to restart it soon in person. And then at those times, we actually go out to different sisters in ministry. And so we plug into their ministries. Like if we go to Shepherd's Corner, then we would be harvesting and planting and those things. So yes, thank you.
Yeah. And I just wanted to add that once COVID's over and people can visit us again, one of the things when people make individual visits or short-term visits to our houses, we often include that in the program that we tailor to that particular person and that occasion.
Yes, thank you. In fact, pray for us. We have someone coming at the end of March to the Columbus area. So at this time, we have about, I don't even know, 23 minutes, I guess. So at this time, I would like to open it up for any questions. If you feel comfortable, you can ask it verbally. If you don't, then you can ask it in the chat, and I can voice your question. And this is what I call secret silence. Actually, there is a song about that. Okay, so there is a question from Terry. Maybe.
I guess I was wondering, Annie, maybe specifically, but I'm sure all the sisters can answer. You speak about doing prison ministry. And I was wondering what kind of formation you had to be able to feel comfortable in that space or providing those resources or interactions, because I am sure that you had some of that.
That is a good question. Let me think. So when I was going in to teach in the prison, that was to prepare for that. I was really talking with colleagues who had taught in a prison before and hearing from their experience and some education for myself on the kind of history of prison teaching and to understand the goal and the kind of structural components of why are these programs being offered, why are they important, and then just bringing my own teaching experience into the setting. For this ministry this year, Colby House does do kind of formation for the volunteers, and they have a number of religious, just because in Chicago there are a lot of congregations with formation programs. So, I'm there as a Dominican novice. There's a Jesuit who is some kind of scholastic or in the process of being formed as a Jesuit. They've had Franciscans who are in formation. So they've got a lot of people who are volunteering there, and then a whole group of volunteers. So the ministry has offered that some formation, but also part of our program at the CDN is working on communication skills, understanding professional standards in ministry, relationships in ministry. So what are the boundaries that you need to have, which are important just as a religious, but also when we're in ministry. And what was the other one I was just thinking about? Well, so a lot of this canonical year is giving you some of that formation as well. So maybe not specific to the prison environment, but for ministry, thinking about, how is racism and anti-racism a component of this, structural inequities that are, just there present in so many of the ministries that we do.
I'm reading Paula's question now. And she's asking, what have you been able to do that you were surprised to have been able to do in Credit Community 4, that you thought I could never do that? Well, what immediately popped into my mind is I have traveled to the most unimaginable places. My mother used to say, is there any place you wouldn't go? We have a daughter community in Nigeria, and I counted among one of my greatest gifts that I've been able to know them and be with them in their ministries and the incredible work that they're doing. Last week, the Pope was in Iraq. 20 years ago, I was in Iraq in the very same places that he visited with a group of other Dominicans. And we were invited by the Dominican Leadership Conference to go to Iraq in solidarity with the congregation of sisters and the friars there. To me, those are just unimaginable opportunities. I'm not sure I thought I was brave enough to do them, but the community called me and I was able to say yes. And they enriched my understanding of varied cultures and openness to people. So that's one answer.
Back in 2000, I had the opportunity to be invited to go to Africa, to Zambia and Zimbabwe, to represent our communities, the Dominican Alliance, which were about 7 different communities, as a collaborative effort to get to know the Dominican sisters in Zambia and Zimbabwe. And that was, I was never afraid to go. So it wasn't that. I was very excited and very, just felt like it was a great honor to be able to do that. And it was obviously a wonderful experience getting to know them, getting to know their ministries, and then forming that relationship upon coming back. We continued to form that relationship with the Dominicans there. And it was a mutual relationship. It wasn't just us giving to their community, but it was a mutual relationship. And now the students from, or the sisters from those communities are continuing to come to a high Dominican university and other universities to earn their master's degrees and college experiences, which has been a powerful experience at our mother house for the sisters to get to know the sisters. They're here with us for about 1.5 years, 2 years, studying and living with our sisters. And then we've also had opportunities through the years for our sisters to go to their community in Zambia and Zimbabwe. And they've done retreats. They've lived with the sisters for 3 or 4 months to get to know them. So it's been a very rich and powerful experience for our whole community to be able to have that relationship with the Dominicans there in Zambia and Zimbabwe. It's part of the Dominican family.
Yeah, I would like to add one more thing, that during your formation years, at the beginning, you probably would be asked to do something similar when you enter, because you have new community to get to know, new city to get to know, new structure of life in terms of being there. The morning prayers are easier, but in the evening, it's like, I used to be a teacher, like, oh no, I have to be home. It's just to get used to those. And so at the beginning, you are asked to do something similar. But during the novitiate year, you would be asked to do something that that you see that there is a need, and maybe you feel that, okay, I could maybe, but I never done. So it's kind of like a stretch, but they would never push you into ministry. So there is a discernment between different opportunities. And I remember during my novitiate year, the first year, I did something similar to Annie. It was called Women in Transition, but it's a residential place for people coming from jail and prison. But then in the second half of the year, that was like one of my biggest fears, because when I was a candidate, I used to ask Margie, and you might remember these, anytime we went over to our healthcare center, I asked her, like, can you please come with me? Because if a sister doesn't say anything, I have no idea how to keep up a conversation, at least at that time. Now I have a hard time shutting my mouth. But at that time, I was like, I can say hi, sister, but I had no idea how to create contact or those things. And so my second half of the novitiate, I volunteered at it's almost like a nursing home, and it's a residential care again for either women who have been abused or mentally ill, or those who would be homeless otherwise. So and then that's where I really learned how to pay attention to those who I serve, and it has been very stretching, I have to say, but I'm very grateful for that experience. Anyone else would like to answer? Maybe Sister Marilyn, looks like, or Pauline. Marilyn first, maybe. Oh no, you know. Okay, you just came closer to the camera. Okay, then Sister Pauline. You're muted.
Okay, I don't mean to make light of that question, because it's a very important one, but I immediately responded inside of myself, oh, that's from the day you become one of us, that you're asked to be a part of something. You got to be kidding, I can't do that. And that's sort of the way I began my journey, getting a letter from the major superiors saying, for the coming year, sister, you will be in Chicago. And I was a novice. And I said, oh, that, if any of you have ever been to Plainville, Massachusetts, that's where I grew up, went to high school, a little bitty town with not much going for it. And so I just said to the group, oh, I think I have to go see Sister because I don't want to do that. And they said, well, let us encourage you not to do that. Don't go. I said, really? And so I went to Chicago for 4 years and I loved it. But then I got another letter that said, for the coming year, Sister, you will go to Brooklyn. I said, that's it. Brooklyn. That's even bigger. I don't think I can do that either. I have to go see Sister and tell her I can't do that. And again, the thing is, we can always do what we feel called to do by the community and God. Think about it, but don't go see her. And lots of times I was asked to go to Ireland and facilitate a meeting with Dermot O'Murcoo. And I had heard of him before and I thought, really? Oh, I don't think I can do that. And so the idea is to receive the request, have whatever reaction you need to have and want to have, and then bring it to prayer and say, okay, God, in another direction, please. And that isn't always where God pointed me, always in the direction of where the request came from. So trust yourself and trust the community and trust God that wherever, and there may be a time when you have to say, I don't speak that language, I can't do it. But other than that, give yourself the permission to find strength and courage to do what comes before you. And this person from Plainville has spent more than half of her life in big cities, and I loved it.
I guess I would just follow along with what Pauline has said. So much of this year has been reflecting on the vows. And the vows are very challenging. Celibacy, to be in authentic relationship with people who are not your friends, they're not your family, you may not have very much in common with them, but to be an authentic, loving relationship with whoever you meet, whoever you live in community with, to live in solidarity with the poor, to live simply and sustainably in a way that is going to care for the earth. And the vow of obedience, to really listen to God, to have that place of solitude and silence within your heart, to really listen to what God is saying to you. They are very challenging. And, there have been moments this year when I think, wow, I don't know that I can, that it hasn't been a real existential doubt, but a real awareness of, it is only by God's grace that I will be able to live these vows with integrity. And I feel the trust that God will give me the grace to live them. But they are challenging. And I think that the living them in community where you have the support. So yeah, Paula, I think your question is kind of bigger than ministry. It's about this life in its fullness.
Yeah, I guess I want to add that as well. It's like when I think about all the different ministries that I've been involved in and that I've been asked to do, I usually think, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to do that, but then, I end up saying, well, yes, okay, I'll try it. And then it always, it has always been just the right thing for me at the time. And so it is amazing. It is God's grace that gives you the grace to be able to do vocation work or to be able to do at the dwelling place or at High Dominican. And then when I had the opportunity to be the mission group coordinator, I said, oh my God, that's like my little group. We have like 90 sisters. And, I want to be there for everybody. And so it's been a challenge, but yet it's something that I have loved, and I feel honored to be able to be with each sister and to be able to get to know them and visit with them and be able to help them when I can. So it is God's grace, and God does, I always trust that God is going to be there to direct me in any way that I need.
I think that in some sense, I've always been aware that there, but for the, it's without the grace of God, we don't really accomplish anything. But I think I was never so aware of it as when I was the director of the Center for Women and Children in Juarez. When I was there for a little bit over 3 years, it was among the most dangerous years to be there. And every morning when I would cross the border, there was always a sense of, is this the day that somebody's going to come up to the car with a automatic weapon? And you just never knew what was going to happen. And every day at the center, there were so many challenges, so many things that there was no way to prepare yourself for ahead of time. But it was always the sense of accompanying the women. And what I learned from them was that every morning when we would gather, and the first thing we would do was stand in a circle and pray. And every one of the women would begin their prayer with saying, "Thank you, God, for giving us this most wonderful new day." Now, I hadn't always crossed the border that morning with exactly that sentiment at the top of my mind. But their centering me in that always brought me back to that kind of wisdom that I think is the sort of wisdom from which we live our lives in the vows and in religious life all the time. Thank you, God, for bringing me to this wonderful the grace of this wonderful new day. And so again, I was so grateful for them teaching me what I needed to know during those years that I was there.
I'd like to contribute a little something here. As I'm listening, I'm thinking, you know what? Everything I do is connected to the fact that I'm a Dominican Sister of Peace. I don't go food shopping, and I'm still a Dominican Sister of Peace because I could hear somebody across the way say, "Sister," and someone might come up to me and say, "Listen, I just lost custody of my kids, and I'm in some food service place for a couple minutes, or the day I was wearing my O.P, my Peace shirt in the middle of COVID. We had just shut down, and somebody turned around and pointed her arm at me, and she said, "That's what we need." And we had our masks on, and I could see the tears in her eyes, and I prayed for her the rest of the day and the world. So there are things that I think it's so much a part of who I am now that I don't go anywhere as an independent agent. I'm always connected to the larger community, and that gives me courage. Like when I've sat in a room with a woman who's told me when she was kidnapped and how she was raped, and I can be there and I can be present, and I know I'm not alone because God is with me, and I have this incredible group of sisters that I know that I'm part of, and for me it makes all the difference in the world. So thank you. You're making me be cognizant of what I have once again.
Well, thank you, everybody. And I'm aware of the time, so I'm not going to ask for another question. However, if you have any other question, the retreat is not over. You might ask, I think you're meeting one more time with your spiritual companion. Do you? I forgot the schedule. But anyway, or if you don't meet with your companion anymore, then, you can always email it to us.
Yeah, they'll meet with their companions at 2:30.
Okay, at 2:30. Okay, so perfect. So you can also have a one-on-one conversation with your questions with your companion, and I hope that this was a helpful session in your discernment. How we are being called to serve the needs of the times, but still rooted in God. So at this time, I am going to touch the ball to Sister Maisum.